Like, we just have to have clean water. We shouldn't be arguing about, well, how clean? Yeah. Or how much pollution can we tolerate? Because we don't have to, like we can do this.
There's options.
And not have all that pollution. And what other industry do we just say, oh, well, you can pollute a little, as long as you put a little bit of reduction on it? Not very many. So this is a big rub for us.
Welcome to another episode of Outstanding in the Field. My name is Chaz Self, and today my guest is Randy Jackson, and I'm excited to have you on the podcast today.
Really cool to be here.
Great. So you could do us a favor and introduce yourself. That would be
sure. Well, I'm a professor at UW-Madison, and I'm a grassland ecologist. So I'm in the Department of Plant and Agroecosystem Sciences, and I teach classes in agroecology. And I'm really passionate about grasslands, and help direct this project that we call Grassland 2.0, which I'd be happy to spiel about as much as you want to spiel about it.
Please spiel. I mean, we're in the perfect place to talk about grasslands.
This is it. This is it. So like, people ask me all the time, what's Grassland 2.0? And like, when I come place like this, I'm like, it's this.
Yeah.
It's grass as far as you can see. And it's just the reason I'm passionate about it, and the folks that I work with are passionate about it, is that it's critical to our long-term well-being as humans. We are humans because of grassland, and we've got to manage and take care of our grasslands, which I take to be like this whole biome. Like, we're on the edge of the grassland biome here, transitioning into the forest biome as you move north of Madison and whatnot, in what we call savanna. But like, when we think about the grassland, it's everything. It's not just patches of prairie and patches of pasture here and there. It's like the whole thing, including Chicago and Milwaukee. And, we've got to take care of the biome better in the 21st century and moving forward. So that's sort of the ethos of Grassland 2.0.
Wisconsin used to be known, which is why I fell in love with farming, for grass farming. I mean, general, and that's beef or grass and dairy specifically I'm passionate about. Why do you think that we have gone so far away from a grass-based system in agriculture?
Well, the pressures are huge. The pressures are immense for folks to be as efficient as possible with respect to their inputs. And here they are.
Told you they'd come.
This is Grassland 2.0. Those pressures are immense, and the way we've set up the farming system, the agricultural system, the agri-food system is where we push farmers to become more and more and more efficient. And this isn't endemic to farming. Like, this is, capitalism broadly speaking.
Yeah.
And what we know is that unless we set up safeguards and boundaries and guardrails on capitalism to push it in ways that we want to go, it will always just converge on the lowest common denominator. And that's what we're in the midst of right now in agriculture. We're just pushing everything towards the lowest common denominator, which is the cheapest, which turns out to be the biggest, gaining efficiencies of scale and all that kind of thing. But as people, we have to ask ourselves, like, is it getting us where we want to go? And our argument is it's not. When I go out and talk to farmers, and when I go out to talk to people in the agri-food industry, and when I just talk to people in Madison, they all agree, like, it's not getting us where we want to go.
Yeah.
So we need to take a different direction.
No one is. I mean, we talked about this. Fart, get out of here. You push her out of the way. I know. Right. You want to be the star. I know. Right. Okay, so one thing that we talked about a couple days ago is that, because if you're as a professor and you're dealing with people in the city, which you talk to different farmers, do you think the normal average consumer or normal average Wisconsinite looks at a cornfield and is like, man, that's great? Like, I don't know if every time I drive by corn, I feel like it's just like almost a crisis that we're in right now. And do you think the normal person is aware of what's going on when it comes to corn and soy?
I think more and more, but still the majority probably don't. I'm always surprised as I meet people that I think people are tuned in now and starting to appreciate the downsides of corn. And look, I'm not here to say like corn is some evil crop and that people who grow corn are evil. There's no nefarious actors in all this. It's people responding to the system we set up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we just have to encourage folks to move towards perennial grass and away from annual grass like corn, because the growing of the corn is compromising our water, it's compromising the climate. I mean, compromising is too loose of a word. It's undermining and degrading the water, undermining and degrading the climate, undermining and degrading biodiversity, and frankly, it's undermining and degrading people. You know, the people who work in these systems are at risk of higher rates of cancer because of the pesticides and the herbicides and that sort of thing. So, just from a holistic point of view, there's just not a lot of upside to it, except that it's immensely productive, and that's great. Except that it comes at a huge cost,
Yeah.
and so we just have to find a way to balance like the yields with all those other things: water quality, biodiversity, carbon in the soil, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this system does,
Right.
Yeah. So that's the thing about it, is like you look around and you're like, oh shit, there's already a system that does that. Why aren't we just rewarding that more and incentivizing it more?
Yeah.
But instead people look at it like, oh, this is backwards, and we're never going to get back to this. This is the way grandma and grandpa did it.
Mm-hmm.
But this isn't the way grandma and grandpa did it either. Like grandma and grandpa did it in a way that they just kind of put them out there and let them beat the pasture down.
Mm-hmm.
Folks like you actually manage it so that it's super productive, puts a lot of roots in the ground, builds carbon, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
enhances biodiversity.
Mm-hmm.
There's ways we can manage the system that are so win-win-win across the board.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Speaking as a farmer, we are the most stubborn that it comes out of all. I think anybody.
no. Academics are the most.
Yeah. So, how do you feel that we could, or even as a regenerative farmer myself, be able to talk and either open the conversation up to conventional farmers that are maybe still in I call it like the threshold pre-CAFO, so 800 animal units. Like I could see all dairies move to grazing if you're milking anywhere between 50 and maybe 500 might be the limit, something like that. But once you get to the 600, 2,000, 3,000 cow dairies, there's no hope for them, I don't believe, on a grass-based system unless we deconsolidate.
Well, there are a couple of like 1,000, almost 2,000.
Really?
Grass-fed
cool.
dairies.
I know the big one in Marshfield, and I remember them. They took on so much ground, they built underground tunnels underneath roads.
Yeah, and there's one out here in Southwest Wisconsin, and they aren't the norm, but it's possible.
Cool.
But what I would say to you, like to get to those folks who are sort of in that mid-size range, as you were saying, and this is one of the things we do in Grassland 2.0, is we talk about the way they raise their replacement heifers.
Yeah.
And grazing replacement heifers, raising them on grass, on pasture, is a huge cost savings. And one of our colleagues just published a paper just last week, a 2-year study. I'm sorry, it was longer than that. I think it was a 4-year study up at Marshfield, down in Madison, showing that pasture-raised replacement heifers, when they enter the lactating herd, are more productive. They have fewer veterinary problems. They have fewer birthing problems. On average, it's a huge cost savings and increases the profitability of what otherwise is sort of pre-CAFO.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to get to those folks to say, like, here's a better way to do the pasture, the heifer rearing.
Yeah.
Get them out on pasture. They're healthier. They're more productive. And that's sort of an entree then, we hope, to like, oh, and we could actually do some milk cows like that too.
That's a great concept, because I think it's I don't know many dairy farmers that are even raising their heifers anymore, because it's all heifer raising, it's beef raising, it's dairy. Most dairy farms don't even raise their own calves anymore.
Well, I mean, so many dairies in Wisconsin now, the bigger ones, they'll take their heifers and ship them out to Colorado and Nebraska and Kansas and have them raised out there in feedlots where they're growing irrigated alfalfa and feeding it to them, which is just like the stupidest thing I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not trying to cast aspersions at anybody, but like if you look at the system overall, to think about taking animals from Wisconsin where they could be raised like this, and to put them on irrigated pasture that's pumping down the Ogallala aquifer, which is going to go away here in the next few years.
Man.
To feed them alfalfa is just mind-boggling, and it creates a big environmental nightmare out there. And then they bring them back here and bring them into the milk herd, and they could be coming home more productive and healthier, and we could be doing good things for the environment if we just kept them here. So one of the
Huh.
things we do is work with a lot of farmers who are smaller and maybe aging out of farming and getting ready to sell the farm, but we want to keep that farm in farming and not
Yeah.
just have it turn into subdivisions and that sort of thing. Can we find a way to help young people get in and raise replacement heifers on grass in those?
Yeah.
And yes, they're doing it for a CAFO, but and we can say what we want about a CAFO, but at least we're keeping land and grass
Yeah.
and keeping people in farming.
And I mean, besides just the economic value of us losing money in the state if it goes out where out west, you're talking about also basically the health value of the land that you're migrating and basically output somewhere
Yep.
else. Why would you do that if you need to come back? Huh?
Yep.
That's a great idea. So that's what Grassland 2.0 focuses on.
That's one of the things that we've been focusing on. We kind of have this two-prong approach. One is Randy goes out and waves his arms all the time and gives talks about like how the whole system needs to change and we need to do things differently in an effort to do like what you're trying to do with this podcast, which is like shift the narrative on what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there is this mindset among the farming community, but also the general public that like the only way to do it now is to grow corn and beans and to have CAFOs, and
Well, that's the only way you can
that's
feed the
that's the
world.
only thing that's rational. It's the
Yeah.
only way we're going to feed the world. All those
Yeah.
tropes that have all been discredited, but they are dominant nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that sort of like trying to shift the narrative stuff. But then like the practical boots on the ground work that we're doing are things like this, working through the numbers on dairy heifer replacement with farmers, with individual CAFO owners and their neighbors who might take the animals and graze them. And so we have folks who are really expert in doing that kind of work and running the numbers and penciling out the return on investment and how long would it take before that's actually a better proposition, a value proposition for the farmer.
Uh-huh.
That's one thing. The other thing we do is run the numbers like that for cash grain farmers and run the numbers like that for beef farmers who are still raising beef in confined situations and feedlot and dry lot situations. So
Yeah, because it almost seems that without, and because I'm first generation farming, and like now we're 2-3
thank you
generations
for that.
away from that's right.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that. It's just so inspiring,
Yeah.
man. I really appreciate it.
And when I think about like the farmers, they fit what 57 now, age in Wisconsin, or 52 is the average age farmer. We're 2 generations now removed from farming. And when I think about that, it's very difficult to find a farmer that's 57 or 52. Let's say he's been, he got sold the system the government wanted them to create. To make a change now is difficult. It's very scary and difficult. I'll admit it's very difficult to lose your license or lose your things, or go from like there's this in dairy especially. We are the only industry that overproduces a product and then cry and complain that we're not getting paid for it because we've overproduced it. And for one time, it would be nice to have one of these farmers sit back and be like, do I really need to produce 150 pounds, or could I cut back to 100 pounds, get paid a little bit more, and everyone else, kind of go from it? And that doesn't seem to be the system in dairy, which is surprising. You know what I mean? It's like we never sat back and been like, it's like doctor, it hurts when I do this. Well, then we should stop doing it.
Well, that's part of that bigger narrative thing that I was talking about, trying to shift, is this notion that we've so ingrained the idea that production is the key metric of success, that yield is the key metric of success, even when there are alternatives that are more profitable, that make the farmer more money. They are nervous about considering them because they've just sort of had it ingrained that like you just have to squeeze as much as you can out of the system, and if you don't, you're a rube, you're leaving something on the table, you're not a good farmer. So these are all these sort of social narratives that I know you had John Strauser on, and these are the things that we're working against and trying to shift.
Mm-hmm.
We helped support a paper that was published, an academic paper a couple of years ago by a guy named John Winston, who did a very thorough analysis of the dairy industry and milk production, and ran the numbers and did a very thorough, and he's an economist, so some of it's way out of my field. But at the end, the takeaway message was for a 300-acre dairy in Wisconsin, the grass-fed situation was 4 times more profitable than the confinement situation. Yeah, it produced less milk, but on a per cow basis and on a per acre basis, it was 4 times more profitable.
I can imagine.
And we go and talk to farmers, and when we look at the numbers, it's like, yeah, sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 2, but it's always more profitable to
Mm-hmm.
feed them on grass, the milkers, not just the replacement
Mm-hmm.
heifers. And so there's clearly, and yet when you talk to farmers, they're like, well, show me the money and I'll do it. And then we go out and we show them the money and they're like, oh, yeah, but yeah, that's not really the way that's not the way I do it. It's like, well, we're begging you to please think about doing it differently.
Yeah.
But I think you have hit the nail on the head with the generational transfer thing. There's so many young people out there who want to get into this and do it the way you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And other ways too. It's not like there's just one avenue, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the things that gives me great hope. Like I teach Agroecology 101, I teach Agroecology 500.
All right, explain it to me. What does agroecology mean?
Agroecology is it's sort of studying the agricultural system through a lens that is not just economic and agronomic, but also social, environmental, ecological,
Okay.
and considering all of those dimensions simultaneously.
Yeah, great.
So it's hard.
Yeah.
And it requires a lot of different expertise to come at it.
Mm-hmm.
But agroecology is the future of agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way we have to assess and evaluate the success of our agri-food system and agriculture in general,
Yeah.
in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion.
Yeah.
Because you asked at the beginning, why are we moving in the direction we're moving? And it's because all we've done is value that dimension of economics. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. We've ignored the environment. We've ignored social dynamics, small towns drying up, small communities being gutted as consolidation happens, because all we value in our system right now is the economics.
Economics, money.
So agroecology pushes us to consider all those dimensions simultaneously. Now, that's great that these academics at Madison consider all these dimensions simultaneously. The big question is, how do we move that kind of thing into policy, where policies get crafted that actually reward and incentivize people who score well on all dimensions, or most dimensions. The devil's in the details on figuring out how we configure those dimensions and all that.
Yeah.
That's politics.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because I texted John the other day and I was like, someone asked me, we got in this argument about food safety with raw milk. And then it became an economic question. Well, I can't spend that much money on milk. Well, it's like, okay, so what? My question to John was that I wonder between subsidies and environmental impact, how much money we put in environmental subsidies, as well as like economic relief, how much does a gallon of milk really cost? Like, could you break down the environmental damage, everything else that's going on with subsidies and everything else, that like a $2.89 gallon of milk in the store really doesn't cost you that. It costs you much more in taxpayer dollars, and we haven't even gotten into the environmental issues that comes into it. So what is the real true cost of some dairy like that?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually have been working with some graduate students who are trying to do that.
All right.
They haven't actually been
awesome.
They haven't been pegging it to a gallon of milk, but I'm going to encourage them to do so. They've been doing it more on a per acre basis right now.
Okay. Yeah.
And they haven't really gotten into the dairy space yet, but I'm going to encourage them to do it. They've kind of just been looking at grass-fed beef and cash grain, corn, soybean rotation.
So simpler almost.
And so like if you take the same 300 acre farm, 200 acre farm, which is, maybe a little bit at the high end of the average in Wisconsin still, and you look at the input costs and the revenues from selling the products, again, this is cash grain versus grass-fed beef. The profitability there is like in the same ballpark. It's probably a little bit more profitable to do cash grain than grass-fed beef.
Okay.
But the variability is super high from year to year. So if you look over a 15-year period, there's a lot of years where the cash grain farmer is really in the red, whereas the grass-fed beef farmer is more or less stable. And it definitely fluctuates, but not as much. But that's just the farm level profitability, right? And then, as you were saying, if you take a look at the whole system and the water quality impact of growing the corn and the beans, and the climate impact, the carbon balance impact, and the biodiversity, and it gets fuzzier and fuzzier to put dollar signs on it, but people do this for their careers.
Yeah.
I'll just say that so far the numbers are, in big round numbers, the corn and bean system costs society about $700 an acre. And that includes the farmer profit.
Yeah. Wow.
The grassland system is about a net positive $120 an acre.
Yeah.
So, without really digging down into the weeds, so to speak, and putting a really fine point on the pencil, you don't need to. You can just see like one's losing money for society and one's, gaining for society.
Right.
Now, who really bears those costs, of course, is a political question, and
Yeah.
we can arm wrestle and fight about that. But
Well, here, to the nutrients have provided us from the grass only, my friends. Cheers. All right.
Is that raw milk?
It's raw milk. Oh! I was hoping someone would do that with me. All right. So.
Oh, that's what milk tastes like?
That's what milk tastes like, right? And you're not. Yeah.
I always take my milk and ice cream, but.
That's all right. Yeah. So I guess another, I guess wonder that, I get this question a lot is like, okay, so regenerative practices, grasslands, we know the system, like Maha, right? It's been huge in the news lately. And like one of the things that got us was like one of our customers emailed and said, man, there's 200 million getting put into conservation practices. And then I look at NRCS and I was like, okay, so what are those conservation practices? And as a farmer, we're all pulled in per county goes. Grass farmers get the highest amount of points evaluated, compared to CAFOs. And then you get into conservation practices. One of them is you're going to be battling for some money to do conservation for manure pits, right? So they build this big giant manure pit and people are like, oh, it's so exciting, you're getting 200 million. And then I was like, okay, well, let's just break it down for like one thing that's crazy for me as a first generation is to listen to the older the farmers that are about to get out, be like talking about cover crops. Something as simple as a cover crop. I didn't grow up on a farm. I know what a cover crop and the importance of is without even knowing it. Like now we're talking about cover crops. So one of the big conservation movements in 800, this 200 million that Maha said is that, oh, it'll go towards these conservation practices. So now we're seeing farmers come in and put a cover crop in. And as soon as springtime comes to plant corn, they spray it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, all right, you got one step forward, which is great that it's, and then two steps backwards.
Yeah.
And that is really difficult for me as to see because you should be excited. It's great that the government is trying to make these efforts,
right. Yeah.
But what's really going on isn't helping us.
Oh God, this has been one of the huge rubs that we've had with the Grassland 2.0 project. Because what you're talking about, like the money to cover crops and no-till and even manure pits and that sort of thing, it's incrementally making a fairly bad situation a little bit better. It's making a bad situation a little bit less bad, but it's still fundamentally bad. Yeah. And again, this is not, I just want to be really clear. I'm not trying to throw any farmer under the bus. They're responding in rational ways, the way we've set up the system. But cover crops, they slow down the loss of nitrate and phosphorus. They don't stop it the way this does. Frankly, this stops it. This contains it in the system and uses it in the system. It regenerates it. So to call something like cover crops regenerative, I think is ridiculous because you're slowing down the loss, but it's still being lost. It's still polluting the waterways, the groundwater and the surface water. So when I say it's been one of the biggest rubs, it's like, well, God, so many people are working so hard just to make these little incremental gains, which are super important and key to the narrative. And I don't want to undermine those folks. I want to support and lift them up. But it is not going to get us where we need to be. Yeah. Like we just have to have clean water. We shouldn't be arguing about, well, how clean? Yeah. Or how much pollution can we tolerate? Because we don't have to, we can do this
options
and not have all that pollution. And what other industry do we just say, oh, well, you can pollute a little, as long as you put a little bit of reduction on it? Not very many. So this is a big rub for us. Yeah. We want to support that stuff. In the meantime, I have worked with another graduate student whose PhD dissertation was looking at NRCS expenditures in Wisconsin over the last, I think it was 15 years, it might have been 20 years, but she was looking at where the money went. And by far the money goes to CAFOs, and by far the money goes to cover crops and cash grain farmers, and into particular geographies, Northeast Wisconsin for the CAFOs, Southwest Wisconsin for the cash grain farmers where the soils are steeper and more erosive. And a relatively small, but significant, but a relatively small pot goes to so-called perennial systems like managed grazing, agroforestry, etc. And like what we realized when we started to analyze the data is like, oh, less of the money goes to like transforming agriculture into a system that actually doesn't pollute.
Mm-hmm.
And more of the money just goes into putting band-aids on systems that do pollute and helping them pollute a little bit less, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
until they have a big event or something like that.
Yeah.
And so like this is like a fundamental question and conversation we have to have politically is like, where do we want our money going? Should we be putting all of that money towards transforming so we have a system that actually cares for us?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we want to just kind of keep hobbling along and patching it together as it leaks and falls apart?
Yeah.
I don't have the answer on that. That's a political thing.
It,
When you run for governor, I will be here. I will be here to plant a flag on transforming.
Well, I always think of it like Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. At the end of the movie, you remember he's talking to the tribe, and all of a sudden he gets an arrow, and it's in one leg, and you're like, ah! And then he turns around and gets another arrow in one leg, and you're like, ah! Like it doesn't get better. It's like it's tough. It's tough to see, and I think it's hard, and I guess John and I, he struck it with me is like who is benefiting from these? My farmers aren't,
Well, the corporations are. I mean, there's no doubt about that. There's a vested interest in the status quo from the corporations, and
mm-hmm.
again, like I can sit here and throw arrows and tomatoes at them, but they're acting rationally. They're doing what they're supposed to. They have like a mandate, fiscal mandate to maximize profits for their shareholders. So they're doing what they're supposed to do. That's on us as a society to figure out how to, again, like curb and put guide rails on the system so that maximizing profits doesn't mean compromising the environment and compromising people's lives and labor and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But as well as I do, like the conversation, as soon as you start talking about like putting guardrails and shifting the game so that capitalism can actually end up in good outcomes, then people just start waving their arms. Oh, you're talking about socialism. You're talking about communism. The state's going to control everything. It's going to be regulation. It's not. We're talking about capitalism, but just putting some boundaries and guardrails so that it ends up with good outcomes that everybody's happy. So.
Yeah, it's funny because John, politically, whatever side you stand on, Cory Booker wrote a law or had a legislation to put all subsidies towards regenerative practices. And what I really, really appreciated about that bill is the fact that you're never going to tell a farmer how to do it. He's never going to listen. He's too stubborn and too poor to pay attention, right?
Well, especially when it's always he's.
Or she's, yeah. And you're like, you get into the system where Cory Booker was like, listen, bro, like, good. You want to make corn and soy, you want to produce ethanol, you want to do what you want to do, great. No more subsidies. If we cut all subsidies out and put 50% of those subsidies towards just regenerative systems, like a grass-based system, or converting a 200-cow dairy CAFO into regenerative, we'll pay for all the fencing, all the seed, everything else. And we looked at that, and that struck with me because it's like, you're not going to walk into a farm and be like, you need to change grassland now. But it's like, if we can take your lifeline away, but give you another lifeline that would support you in a positive way, like you can make that decision or not. And that got me, because then I was like, oh, that's how you're going to have real political systematic change, when you take the lifeline away from these guys. And I believe in it. And I don't even start to understand the economics of big corn and soy and dairy, because like you'll meet guys that are, they call themselves the 2-week farmers. I don't even talk to them. I plant in the spring and then I spray and I come back and I harvest in the fall. And you're like, oh my, you're the farthest from a farmer I've ever met in my life. But he claims to be super rich and whatever in 10,000. And then, during the first Trump administration, it was the first time as a farmer that got a no holds bar, no restriction handout. You could buy whatever you wanted. It didn't have to go to equipment, didn't have to go to seed.
It was hush money.
Yeah, hush money.
Don't make any problems while I do these tariffs.
Yeah, but it was crazy, because then you were like, man, I don't know. I ended up getting a lot for organic system. I was like, wow, this is great. This saved a lot of my life at that time.
Yeah.
But then you look at the top 10 largest farms in the United States, 7 of them are owned by foreign companies, and they all got a couple $1 million a piece. And you're like, oh man, like how do we go? So
I mean, like the USDA Economic Research Service publishes this data every year, and I've looked at it for the last 27 years now. Across the United States, there's 300 million acres of corn, and across the United States, the average farm level profitability without any subsidies and Trump payouts, etc., is -$10 per acre.
Oh.
Now, yeah, some years it's 400, and some years it's -200, and it depends on whether you own the land or not, and all this kind of thing. But on average, it's -10. The year you're talking about that Trump gave those handouts for whatever it was called,
Hush
the
money.
tariff relief,
Yeah, I
hush
don't
money.
know what it was. Yeah.
Like in Illinois, on the most productive land, the profitability of those farms went from like -5, I don't remember exactly, but it was negative, to +$70 per acre. But it just like put a fine point on it, how like the system is set up so that the government titrates, it trickles in enough money to keep people doing what they're doing. In the meantime, the corporations keep extracting and building their
Bigger
wealth.
and bigger and bigger.
And
Yeah.
so it's just, some people call it serfdom. You're just kind of keeping people in place out on the ground doing your bidding for you. Some
Mm-hmm.
people call it a pyramid scheme. We can call it whatever we want, but
Yeah.
the money is flowing up and away from the
It's a
farms.
Ponzi scheme. Yeah.
It's a Ponzi scheme, yeah. So,
Wow. Yeah, and it's great. It's so refreshing for me to like, be in these conversations because for me, like we just started the social media thing ourselves because it's like I do tours every Saturday, and for the last 10 years we've been doing it. Like if milk comes from a cow, we're on the same level. Like our normal education level on farming is so minute. Like we know nothing as a population now. Like it's so gone first to where a point where it's like, all right, like let's start, and every once in a while you get a tour where people just want to see cows and be happy and walk, and most people don't want to walk anymore, but you do it and you're like, all right, cool, a chicken and a cow, and you're like, you can see, and I'm glad I can give that experience. But then all of a sudden you get some tour groups, like if you were on my tour, you'd be like, okay, so what's the microbioscience behind your soil, and when you're grazing, how fast are you grazing, what legumes are you using, and like you get into these conversations. And I think the biggest harm that we're doing now is that there's not a lot of education on it, and there are people that want to stay educated about it, because it's such a complicated industry that, like, that's why I love farming. Like I'll never know it all, ever. I don't care if you spend your whole life trying to know it, you just
right.
will not do it. You
Yeah.
learn something new every
That's
day.
part of why it's fun too, though, right?
True, yeah, you can't get bored. We have experiences all the time where we're like, I didn't even know that could happen. Okay, I guess we're gonna deal with it now.
This is exactly why we've at UW-Madison stood up this new major called agroecology that is trying to draw more and more people into the agricultural space. People who, I have freshmen in agroecology 100 that, as a class of 200, 250 students, when they start to hear about a type of agricultural production that actually is good for the world, is good for the environment, is good for people like this, their eyes are just like, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I thought, like when we were in high school, we had a little section on agriculture and in environmental science, and it was like agriculture is bad, but that's just the cost of feeding ourselves. And if we're going to have inexpensive food, then we just have to tolerate it and find ways to make it better. And so they get to the university and they start hearing from people like you, farmers who come in and give talks and show their system and talk about how they're building organic matter instead of losing it, and enhancing the herp population in their grasslands, and working on the riparian areas. And they're like, I want to be a part of this. And not only that, most of my graduate students in the last 10 years have been what I call farm kid refugees, who came from farms where mom and dad have been like, go to Madison, go ahead, we'll tolerate the liberal indoctrination. But when you come back, we're ready for you to take over the farm. And then they go back and they're like, I don't want to do it this way. And then of course that creates a huge family rift. But there are opportunities with those generational transfers for those kids to come back, those young people to come back and take over the farm and start to build it out like this. And it gives me great hope that we can rebuild the farm infrastructure in Wisconsin.
Yeah, so we're still small enough that we can, and
And the other thing we talk about this all the time in Grassland 2.0, we still have livestock. Like if you go to Illinois, there's no livestock anymore, and so you might talk about trying to get grassland, and they're like, what would we do? There's no vets. There's no, like, where do you get the feed? There's no, like, the livestock part of it is gone, and here we still have it. And I think we've got to like capture before it leaves, and we go completely to
massive pathos.
Yeah. if we look at the DACAP publishes data every year, and for the last 25 years, we've lost 522 dairy farms a year,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been a linear decline. And if you continue the linear regression through the data, if you continue it out, by the year 2037, we're going to have 5 dairy farms. And we keep talking about, like, this has got a plateau. Like, it can't go down to that. It can't go down to 5.
Yeah.
500,000 head CAFOs or something like that.
Yeah.
And actually, I have colleagues who think that would actually be a good thing, because then we would just have 5 point source problems.
Yeah,
We could regulate the shit out of it.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have this distributed problem.
Yeah.
But like people like us, I think really it's really important to have farms across the landscape, and farmers and farm communities, and so.
Yeah, I mean rural communities.
Rural
in general.
communities, yeah.
And I think about being a farmer, how much money we spend locally compared to like what these corporations are, and farming. Well, that's good. That gives me hope. It really it's great that there's people that are encouraged into it. Like I didn't even know that was a thing in Madison, so it makes me happy that there's other people inside. And one thing I always do on the tours with people I get is it's always like when they come out, they're always like, "Oh yeah," like or they see the cows grazing, they're like, "Yeah, it's common sense farming." And people, are like, well, no young kid wants to get into it. I'm like, man, if you ever walked on a 7,000 cow dairy, no kid doesn't want to get into that, dude. You know what I mean? They're going to want to have 35 head, 200 head, whatever, be on grass and be able to be outside for it to make sense for young people to want to get in. So, oh, great. And Randy, this has been really awesome.
Hey, we didn't even talk about my research.
Yeah, let's do it. Come on. No, I want to know.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, please.
I don't want to bore people with the research.
I want to get bored from the research because I'm not going to be. What's the research on?
Well, so for a long time, I've helped lead with a guy named Dr. Greg Sanford this long-term cropping systems trial. So a lot of this Grassland 2.0 thing I've been talking about is born out of this long-term research. This is up in Arlington, north of Madison, about 25 minutes. And it's a 36-year-old experiment of side-by-side corn and beans, managed in a really high input industrial way, best genetics every year, etc. Corn and alfalfa, organic corn and alfalfa, managed grazing on cool season pastures, restored prairies, all side by side, randomized and replicated. And the takeaway message from that work, which we published a couple years ago, looking at the carbon in the soil, is that every system in that experiment lost significant amounts of carbon, except for the perennial grass, the pasture, and the prairie. Mm-hmm. The pasture and the prairie gained carbon in the surface horizons of the soil, but also lost carbon at depth, like below 30 centimeters. They lost carbon. We don't know this, we haven't done this experiment, but we speculate and hypothesize that we're losing carbon at depth because of the changing climate. We're stimulating microbial activity down there, but we're not putting much carbon down there really deep the way the old prairie did. So the grasslands like these, the cool season grasses, they're putting a lot of carbon in the surface horizons, but it's not getting down too deep. So anyway, the takeaway message of all that is like the perennial grasslands were holding on to the carbon they had 30 years ago. Every other system, corn and alfalfa, organic corn and alfalfa, they're all losing carbon to the atmosphere.
Okay, so explain to me, like, why is carbon important?
Carbon's important because carbon in the atmosphere is what's driving climate change. And so there's a lot of talk in the regenerative ag movement and in the conservation movement in general about sort of natural climate solutions, which would be like ways to turn agricultural systems into carbon sinks, so that they take carbon out of the atmosphere through plant growth and then put it in the roots and put it in the soil. And there's a lot of claims out there. Most of the research, the lion's share of the research, only looks at the surface and doesn't look deep. We're seeing a signal of change deep, and that's really important for the overall change in carbon. So what we have observed over 30 years is that all of those annual cropping systems that get disturbed frequently are sources of carbon to the atmosphere. They're contributing greenhouse gases on net to the atmosphere. And that says nothing about the cows and the fertilizer that was, created in Pennsylvania to apply to the crops, etc.
Yeah.
It's just the carbon balance of the ecosystem.
Huh.
But the perennial grasslands with their deeper roots, their perennial roots, their perennial cover, when they're managed well,
Mm-hmm.
like if you just beat down a pasture down to the nubs and have a bunch of bare soil, it's not going to be a carbon sink.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take care of it like you do, rotate the animals, stimulate productivity of the grass, then you're actually building carbon in the surface horizon.
Mm-hmm. Solution.
It's a solution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a solution that helps us hold on to the carbon we have in the soil, which is key.
Mm-hmm.
We'd love to be able to store carbon, but we think that because it's getting warmer at night and it's warmer in the winters, we're not at an equilibrium. The system is moving to a new equilibrium. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that's an equilibrium with less carbon in the soil.
Yeah. Great.
So anyway, that's sort of the gist of most of the research we've been doing over the last few years.
That's awesome. Okay, so this is going to be a great topic that I love to talk about. And because I had issues starting my farm and my local community, if anyone's going to run for your local offices. Don't worry about the bigger ones, but town boards, commission boards. They gave me a hard time. I ended up getting such a hard time when I started that I ran for a supervisor position.
Hard time about what?
About starting, like getting my permits for agritourism and getting my permits to start this or whatever. But long story short, it made me run. I lost by like 40 votes. So they asked me to be on the planning commission board. So to get back to my question to you is that we were on the planning commission board and we had these fresh college kids, right? Change the world, right? And I'm a farmer and I have solar. And now the biggest topic we talk about is solar farms, right? So we took this land. So these kids came on. I'm on the planning commission board. So I'm on both sides and I support both sides. And I said, he's like, well, what could we do? Because We Energies comes in and basically says, there's nothing you can do about it, bro. You can't. But they're like, we'll establish prairie. And I said, okay, if you're going to establish prairie under solars, how are you going to manage it?
Yeah.
It was not answered. So do you think there is a system we could create with the future of solar farms and prairies being established on a solar farm?
Well, I don't see why you couldn't have solar panels right here up above the cattle, positioned and configured in ways that are beneficial to the cattle and the solar. Mm-hmm. And if this is prairie grass, that's prairie grass. And if it's cool season pasture grasses like you have, it's cool season pasture grasses. I don't see any reason why that isn't doable. And in fact, I know they're doing it in places. Mm-hmm. It's just that it's, they'll argue it's more expensive to set it up in the first place. And you got to get it elevated. That makes it harder to clean the panels. There's all kinds of things that make it harder. But in the end, if you do the calculus and you look at all the trade-offs and like the benefits, it's probably worth it, like financially and environmentally and socially and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And we have to get more solar like energy one way or the other. Mm-hmm. We just have to be smart about how we do it and creative with how we do it. People have designed landscapes where riparian corridors have panels set up in particular ways. Just like we've done with cell towers to some degree, where cell towers have been set up in ways that they aren't so obtrusive, visually. Anyway, we just have to let our creativity go and not just have this notion that, well, we just have to turn this whole field into a solar farm and that's it. And nobody gets to come in. We're putting a fence around it. I mean, nothing's going to piss off the community more than that. Yeah. So you got to come to communities and imbue them with power and agency in the whole thing and say, look, we need more solar power. Come up with some good ideas for how to make it happen. Does anybody want to try and make it happen?
Yeah.
And work with communities so that they can take ownership in it. But right now, the communities, I think, by and large, just feel put upon and like, this is happening and we're coming from Madison and we're going to tell you what to do with your land and your neighborhood's going to change, but that's the way it goes. Get over it. That's obviously not a good social proposition. So,
no. Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, I mean, I think about it. Joel Salatin, we did the podcast with him, and he said he's making mobile shade coops because now, like, on Grasslands, the last 2 weeks ago it hit 90. We got to come in. We're not going to be grazing when it hits 90. So I wonder if there's some sort of creativity you could do.
Absolutely.
Instead of trees, you do solar or something that would help.
Or my friends at the Savannah Institute who are working on agroforestry and Savannah grazing, silvopastoralism. I mean, you take an area like this and you plant some trees for shade, and then you also plant some solar panels that are, you know, kind of irregularly spaced so that it's more like a savanna. I'm just trying to think outside the box right now.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I mean by let our creativity go. And there's just a whole mess of undergrads and smart graduate students at the universities who love to do projects like this to like help design these systems in ways that work with farmers and work with the community.
Yeah.
We got to unleash all that instead of just letting the corporate interests come in and say, nope, this is the way it has to be. It's got to be these fences. It's got to look like a compound. The end.
Yeah, that's like.
Otherwise, it's not cost effective because that's bullshit.
And you're gonna have pissed off communities,
right?
Because they all are everywhere.
Yeah. I told you I have all the answers, man.
That's awesome, dude.
Just got to get you in the governor chair.
Yeah, it will be one day. Great. Well, Randy, I really, really appreciate you coming, man. This has been really, really great. And yeah, is there anything you want to plug where I can find some of your research or Grassland 2.0?
Yeah, Grassland 2.0. We're at grasslandag.org. My website also links to a lot of this research, and we have a lot of sort of translational papers and that sort of thing for the general public to kind of get access to the research, because I know the scientific research can be kind of dense sometimes.
Well, you got to turn into a 1-minute video, so it seems like nowadays. So.
Yeah, but it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great, Randy, 100%. Cool. Thanks so much, man. Oh, great, dude. That's cool. Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't met each other. We're actually probably a lot more connected than we think.
Yeah.